On July 1st, 2026, on what would have been Princess Diana's 65th birthday, Prince Harry released a video tribute to his mother without any advance coordination with Buckingham Palace. There was no briefing to royal correspondents, no joint statement, no shared approval process of any kind. The Duke of Sussex simply posted the footage himself, on his own platform, on his own timeline. For 3 years, Harry had said almost nothing publicly about his mother's memory on the anniversaries that mattered most. This year, that silence broke, and it broke entirely on his terms. This is not just another Sussex social media moment. Today, we're examining why palace officials reportedly misread the Sussexes' earlier silence as a sign of healing, what the footage Harry released actually contains, why its tone has drawn direct comparisons to his mother's own words from nearly 3 decades ago, and why 2 other family members chose to mark this day by not marking it at all. Let's get into it. Sussex representatives had reportedly signalled weeks earlier that Harry intended to mark his mother's birthday quietly this year, a private gesture rather than a public one. According to a report circulated by Hello magazine, aides close to the family had described plans for a low-key remembrance, possibly a visit rather than a statement. Inside the palace, that signal was apparently read as encouraging. Royal biographer and Majesty magazine editor Ingrid Seward has said that any sign of restraint from the Sussex side tends to get interpreted, rightly or wrongly, as a step toward calmer relations. Sources close to Kensington Palace suggested officials were cautiously optimistic heading into the anniversary, hopeful that quiet would simply mean quiet. The date itself carries growing weight. Diana was born on July 1st, 1961, and died on August 31st, 1997, at the age of 36. Next year marks 30 years since her death, a milestone anniversary the palace is already said to be planning to observe formally. That means every gesture made this year, however small, is being read as a preview of how the family will handle 2027 collectively, or how visibly they will handle it apart. This is not just a birthday. It is a rehearsal for how Diana's legacy will be presented to the public a year from now, and for who gets to control that presentation. Diana's own relationship with the institution she married into is well documented. In her 1995 Panorama interview with the BBC's Martin Bashir, she spoke candidly about feeling worn down by palace life, describing an isolation that had little to do with her family and everything to do with the machinery surrounding them. That interview, and the sense of confinement she described within institutional duty, has become one of the defining texts of how the Sussexes talk about that same institution nearly 30 years later. This is also not the first time the palace has effectively managed how Diana is publicly remembered. In 2017, for the 20th anniversary of her death, William and Harry organised a memorial concert together and later unveiled a statue of their mother side by side in the sunken garden at Kensington Palace, a moment choreographed jointly down to matching messaging from both households. That template, brothers presenting a unified tribute, has effectively defined how Diana's memory has been marketed to the public for most of the last decade. This year's solo release breaks that template for the first time since Harry stepped back from royal duties, and several palace watchers say the break itself is being read as more significant than the video's content. Since 2020, Harry marked his mother's birthday only through brief, private gestures. A single photo with no accompanying statement in 2023, no public acknowledgement at all in 2024, and a short, handwritten note shared by a family friend in 2025. Each of those years, palace aides reportedly interpreted the minimal engagement as evidence that Harry preferred to keep his grief private rather than public, a reading that quietly reinforced hopes of an eventual softening in relations. The footage itself is what has drawn attention. According to 2 people who reviewed an early cut, shared in part with Us Weekly, the video runs just under 4 minutes, longer than any personal tribute Harry has previously posted, and was uploaded directly to the couple's own channel rather than shared through any royal rota outlet. It does not simply show family photos set to music. It includes voiceover passages, understood to be written by Harry himself, that reference his mother's own words about feeling shut out at an institutional level, not by her family personally, but by the structure surrounding them. One royal source described the tone as uncomfortably close to language the family has spent decades trying to soften. That alone would have been notable. What has made royal commentators sit up is how closely the cadence matches Diana's own delivery in 1995. Commentator Richard Fitzwilliams noted publicly that Harry, likely without intending an exact echo, appears to have absorbed his mother's rhetorical instincts. The same soft pauses before naming what hurt, the same restraint around individuals, the same refusal to let institutional language soften what he meant. In one passage, Harry reportedly describes watching people he loved reduced to their usefulness to an institution, language that closely mirrors how Diana once described her own worth being measured by duty rather than personal well-being. This was not framed as an attack on the monarchy exactly, but the parallel was consistent enough that several commentators flagged it independently. Then there is the question of timing, and this is where sources say Meghan's involvement becomes harder to separate from Harry's own instincts. The tribute landed just weeks before the Sussexes are expected back in Britain for events tied to the one-year countdown to Harry's Invictus Games in Birmingham, alongside engagements for Well Child and Scotty's Little Soldiers. A source close to the couple's production team told the Daily Mail that the couple had discussed at least 2 alternative release dates, including the anniversary of Diana's death in August, before settling on the birthday instead. A choice one insider said was made deliberately because it reads as personal rather than political. That same source said Meghan had pushed for the tribute to be released on Harry's own channel, not shared through any palace-adjacent outlet, specifically so it would stand alone ahead of the couple's return. Whatever her motivations, Meghan has spent years watching her husband's every public gesture toward his mother picked apart in public, and encouraging him to control the framing himself is, at minimum, understandable. But if the timing was deliberate, it also means a moment framed as private grief was, at least in part, strategic. This was not just a memorial video. It was, according to those sources, a repositioning tool timed to precede a very public return. Diana's relationship with her sister-in-law was complicated but genuine, and her relationship with Andrew was warmer than most outsiders ever assumed. Their silence this year does not necessarily mean indifference. Grief inside that family has always looked like withdrawal as often as it looks like performance. Still, the contrast is difficult to ignore. Prince Andrew's schedule showed no public engagement tied to the anniversary, and observers noted no visible gesture toward his former sister-in-law's memory this year. Sarah Ferguson, who has in past years posted personal tributes calling Diana her dear friend, issued nothing publicly this time, a break from her own pattern that several longtime royal watchers found conspicuous. Neither has explained the shift, and Buckingham Palace did not comment on either absence. Harry, estranged from formal royal duties for more than 3 years, produced the most emotionally direct public tribute to Diana of anyone in the family this year. Andrew and Ferguson, both still physically closer to the institution Diana once belonged to, said nothing at all. The son who left was the one who spoke. The 2 who stayed said nothing. What this moment suggests is not a single answer about reconciliation, but a pattern. Each anniversary tied to Diana seems to reset the same question, whether the Sussexes are drifting further from the institution or finding new, more controlled ways to remain part of its story. This year, Harry spoke and the palace listened without steering. Next year, 30 years after Diana's death, that balance will be tested on a much larger stage. The rhythm of distance and engagement between Harry and the institution he left has repeated with almost every major date since 2020, drawing closer, then pulling back, never quite settling into either shape for long.